Welcome back. We're continuing the conversation on the Ogoni land cleanup. I'm being joined by the former chairman of the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, Mr. Lancelot Anyanya. Thank you so much for joining me on the program this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, talk to us a little bit. There's been a lot said already about this cleanup. There's been a long time coming, and taking a look at the UNEP report, it will take as much as 25 to 30 years to achieve this cleanup. But for you, as a former chairman of NOSDRA, when do you think this cleanup should actually begin?
Well, for me as a citizen, like you rightly noted, I have long ceased being chairman. My interest and passion will therefore just stem from the fact that I'm a Nigerian who is interested in the good and well-being of Nigeria, and in particular of the Niger Delta, and maybe bringing it closer home a little because I come from that general area and from a community also grievously impacted and covered by the UNEP report as well. So from that personal perspective, I would like the cleanup to begin 50 years ago. But we've only had the ceremonial launch yesterday, and like they say, better late than never. So now that has been done, like the speakers at yesterday's event all said, most of them, the hard work begins really now. Because if you've taken a look at the UNEP report, it's extensive, it's broad, and covers several issues, and provides essentially a framework for how the cleanup of the area might be engaged. So the real hard work begins now. The hard work begins now, and the hard work is spelling out the details of the execution and implementation strategy, spelling out the details of how you approach different priorities that need to be tackled, clean up that vast area, as it were. And we're only dealing with Ogoni land now and the surrounding areas, which will take you into the riverine parts of that area, into Andoni and other communities in River State. So if we're talking about the entire Niger Delta, ultimately, you know, that's real hard work. So the hard work begins now. Yesterday was just the ceremonial, but better late, like we said, than never.
But then talking about the solutions now, what will make it work? If you listen to the conversation I had just a few minutes ago with Bosin, there's a lot of stakeholders involved in this particular issue. So we have the oil facilities on one hand, and then we have other stakeholders who are from the region, just like yourself. But then the others who have been agitating and have been vandalizing oil assets in the Niger Delta. So what solutions? Well, we're hoping to re-establish a connection with Mr. Lancelot Anyanya, who is the former chairman of the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, as we continue to look at the cleanup challenge with regards Ogoni land in Rivers State, of course, and environs. That is one particular area that has been more than a source of worry for the federal government and residents as well. So we've got Mr. Anyanya back with us. Thank you so much for sticking around. So let's take a look at the solutions. Now, we're talking about solutions to make this cleanup work. Now, we've got multiple stakeholders. We've got the oil facilities. We've got other residents of the area, those who are agitating for to have their own share and to also have the environment clean. What do you think, what kind of solutions do you think should be approached and should be looked at this time?
The UNEP report makes broad recommendations. Like I said, it talks about several measures, political, technical, operational, that need to be considered in developing in going forward with the implementation of the cleanup. Now, that process, I think, has started because prior to and in the build-up to the ceremony of yesterday, the Minister of the Environment, I think, visited a number of stakeholders, But as you rightly noted, the stakeholding community is quite wide and varied, and so that process of engagement must continue. But even before that, there's the challenge of spelling out the hard facts, the nitty-gritty, the devil in the detail of implementing that report. In most parts, the report says broadly what could be done, what may be done. It doesn't say what will or must be done. I think it is understood that will be developed by the national authorities, the regulatory authorities, and the government stakeholders, communities in the area, state and local governments, the oil companies will have to work together in a stakeholding framework to develop the specific action plans. I am not in government, but I want to assume,
Mr. Anyanya, what do you think should be the strategies to be adopted right now? What strategy? How do you think this implementation should go about? Because as it is, it's very novel that we have this coming up at this time. And so as much as possible, we need to run with it. So what practical strategies, even though we don't have a very clear idea of what this framework is for you as a stakeholder and as a Nigerian, what do you think the strategies should be at this time?
I would rather speak to what the guiding principles should be, because the UNEP report is quite detailed. It talks about, it gives guidance as to what the priority should be in terms of targeting areas to be cleaned up. It says, for instance, that the areas where the people are at most risk should be targeted first, and gives in that kind of scale of preference, if you like, the other priority areas that should be focused upon. But the critical issue is that you have to create the right environment. And I think we've started on the right note. We must maintain the momentum in terms of stakeholder engagement, community engagement. We must make sure that the process does not become politicized. You have to remember that the Ogoni struggle, and indeed the agitation of the entire people of the Niger Delta for better conditions of living, not even for wealth, not even for material benefit now, just better conditions to live in, predates the advent of this republic, this particular republic of our democracy. Therefore, our leaders at all levels must understand and congregate around the conviction and the ideology that this is beyond politics, and that nobody, no leader at any level must play politics with this. This is about the survival of our people, the survival of whole communities, and the survival of our nation. The issue of oil spill in the Niger Delta, in Ogoni land and elsewhere in Niger Delta, like I had said severally before, is an existential threat to the people of that region and to Nigerians at large. Okay, because we're talking about the environment, and while it looks for now as if the epicenter of the problem is in the Niger Delta or in Ogoni land, ultimately all of us are at risk, and ultimately all of us are in jeopardy. So I think the critical issues I'd like to speak to now would be for government to sustain the momentum. Now we've made contact, as it were, the momentum must be maintained in terms of community engagement, while the technical teams, the various technical teams, begin to hammer out the final details of how they might approach their work. It will be difficult for me to begin to say what they must do and how they must do it in specific technical terms. That we must yield to the expertise of subject matter experts. However, we must remain engaged with different stakeholding groups, traditional institutions, youth groups, because again, for example, you have to remember the report says that there is ongoing contamination because of artisanal refining going on, what the black market or the illegal refineries you talk about, that the security agencies are grappling to deal with every day. While that goes on, the areas remains contaminated on an ongoing basis. So, and it says also in the report that before you begin to do certain serious cleanup in certain areas, efforts must be made to stop those kind of illegal activities, if you want to put it that way, so that you are not solving a problem, you're not treating a condition while the patient is still hemorrhaging or bleeding. So I think those are the things that we must do now. Communication must be ongoing, must be sustained, must be coherent, must be very clear, and government must match, and all stakeholders must match this commitment with action. There is a lot of funding requirement. 1 billion is not the ultimate cost. That's the initial cost recommended or estimated. Ultimately, maybe looking at a cost beyond that. What are the strategies for raising this funding on a sustainable basis so that we do not get to any point and funding becomes a problem? If cash flow or funds flow becomes a problem, the interpretation with our people at the communities might be that this is another round of one of those wayo, this will come and do us. And the moment you break trust, remember that for many years, this process could not go forward because of trust deficit between the leadership and the led at different levels of our government and between the stakeholders, whether it's in the oil companies and the communities. So now that we have a very fragile process of trust engagement, we must deepen it, we must widen it, we must strengthen it. That, I think, is the most important commodity we need to put on the table and to build upon for us to have a successful cleanup exercise, whether it's going to take 25 or 30 years. The important thing is that we start and we remain engaged with it down the road.
As inclusion to stakeholders that should help to monitor this, do you think the civil organizations also have a role to play, aside from the other stakeholders that you've mentioned?
What organizations?
Civil rights organizations.
Oh, yes, clearly everybody has a role to play because the journey that has brought us where we are today was not the endeavor of one particular group. The Ogoni struggle and indeed the Niger Delta struggle in large part has been the aggregate effort of different stakeholders, including our partners and friends from the international community, civil rights groups within and outside Nigeria. So they have clearly they have a role to play, and that role is to hold all stakeholders to their commitment, to remain authentic and genuine and serious about their commitment, and to deliver on the practical requirements of those commitments. If that practical requirement means that people have to speak with our youth to say this is not the time to see everybody or any company who comes in to do clean up as a target for kidnapping, of course, that message must go out. Because the moment we make the environment unsafe for people to work in, then we are creating problems for ourselves. This is also the time to speak to different groups that our people must exercise patience. The results may be slow in coming, but again, those who are supposed to give results must be consistent. We shouldn't have a series of false starts. So again, I hope that in the coming days and weeks and months, the responsible agencies of government and other stakeholders will spell out clearly. I know the governance structure, for instance, is not very clear. The board of trustees for the cleanup project under the auspices of IPREP or whatever else government may choose to use, the board of trustees and other governance structures are not yet made clear. Including individuals who will be appointed to these responsibilities. It is very important that we have individuals who can win and sustain and retain the confidence and support of our people. Because ultimately, without the support on an ongoing basis of the communities where this work will be carried out, we will be wasting our time.
Mr. Anyanya, thank you so much for joining me on the program this morning and sharing your perspectives with us. Mr. Lancelot Anyanya is the former chairman of National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency. He joined us from our Abuja studios as we focused on the Ogoni land cleanup. Well, Business Morning continues in just a moment. We turn our attention to the markets. The state of the markets at this time, the market already in early trade. Rotimi Fakayejo, the CEO of Enterprise Stockbrokers, joins me after now. Stay with us.